With News Alert now, we have just been handed some excerpts of the president's speech. Let's get right to them. First, this is going to the character of the humanitarian component of the president's executive action. Quote, "That's the real amnesty, leaving this broken system the way it is. Mass amnesty would be unfair. Mass deportation would be both impossible and contrary to our character. What I'm describing is accountability, a common sense middle ground approach. If you meet the criteria, you can come out of the shadows and get right with the law. If you're a criminal, you'll be deported. If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up." And let's take a look at a few bullet points associated with the president's executive action tonight. It provides amnesty for up to 3.7 million parents, 1.5 million under revised DACA law, for a total of 5.2 million. Those figures, by the way, come from the Migration Policy Institute. It would also focus on deporting felons, not families, as you heard in the excerpt. It would shift resources at the border. It would streamline immigration court proceedings, and it would provide criminal background checks and a tax base from people who are now illegal. Let's bring in our panel now. Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox News senior judicial analyst, A.B. Stoddard, associate editor of The Hill, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Well, if ever there was a honeymoon on Capitol Hill, it is now officially ended. What does Congress do at this point? Charles, let's start with you.
Well, they can't do much right now because the Senate remains in the hands of the Democrats. I think what the Republican leadership is going to try to do is to try to make sure that the Republicans in the Congress don't lose their heads. This is an obvious attempt by the president to distract the Republicans, to enrage them, and to bait them into something that will undo the victory they had on Election Day. This is a way to make the president relevant, to make him central. After all, what have we been talking about for the last week or so? Not the election, not a Republican agenda, but this. And it seems to me what the Republicans have to do is to wait till they get control of the Congress to deal with this, but not to allow this to override their one imperative. When they get control of the Senate next year, to have an agenda to pass items that are very important to ordinary Americans, like tax reform, energy enlargement, etc., and not allow this to become a distraction. They cannot reverse this any more than they were able to reverse Obamacare with the first shutdown. And I have to say that even though I sound awful, I think I'm still of sound mind.
Maybe Charles gets to the point of baiting the Republicans, and that kind of gets to the heart of this omnibus spending bill that they face and the potential for a government shutdown.
Right. Well, they have a few choices. They can actually try to write a new bill while the Democrats still control the Senate that has new funding allotments for the remaining fiscal year. That's a difficult haul. What you're hearing a lot of is an attempt to just get another continuing resolution, which is a stopgap measure. You keep everything funded at the same levels, and you try to get out of town. Republicans take the Congress back in January when they could actually manage the books and enforce their own priorities into the budget process. That right now is the big question. How long do you fund the government for? Do you make it short so they can come back and use their leverage, attack immigration and other things? Or, as some in the Republican leadership want, do you extend it through September 30 to get that fight off the books? They're under tremendous pressure from conservatives, obviously, to make it short so they can come back in January and start using the power of the purse for their own priorities. That's actually an internal debate going on right now. How do you deal with immigration, and how do you deal with many policy items without having a huge budget fight as soon as they're in control?
Judge, Brit Hume made the point on Fox News Sunday last week that every time there is a government shutdown, Republicans take blame, and the polls bear that out. We have a poll from October of 2013, a little more than a year ago, that showed at the time of that government shutdown, at that time, Republican favorability rating was 30%. Unfavorable rating, 63%. They don't want to return to those days.
You're right, and Britt, as usual, is right, but I'm not sure that would happen the next time. If, for example, we all know the government runs out of its ability to pay money on December 8th or thereabouts. I may not have the right date. And as A.B. said, the leadership wants to extend it to the end of the government's fiscal year, September 30th. If it's extended just until January or February, and the new Republican Senate and the new Republican House has to address this. And it sends a reasonable, meaningful budget to the president, but one that does not give him all the money that he wants. And he vetoes that. I don't know that that's necessarily going to inure to the detriment of the Republicans. But honestly, I agree with AB. I don't think that the Republican leadership is up for this fight, and I agree with Charles. The Republicans have to pick their fights. They cannot necessarily accept the bait that the president gives them, and he's going to lay out that bait tonight.
Charles, I'll give you the last 30 seconds of this segment. Will we see a new mass migration from Central America? Senator Rubio said today that oftentimes these kinds of things are misinterpreted in Central America.
Well, you don't have to misinterpret it, you just have to interpret it. This executive action is a gigantic neon sign on the Rio Grande saying to Central Americans and to other people around the world, if you wait in line and you apply for legal immigration, you're a sap. You come here illegally, you have children, and eventually you will be legalized. This will cause a complete new cohort. We're going to have 11 million new illegal immigrants. In 10 or 15 years, we will be through this again and again. I would not oppose this if we were going to be serious about shutting the border. There is no seriousness whatsoever coming out of the administration or the Democrats on that. This is an invitation to a mass migration.
More with the panel on this very same subject after a quick break.